Hey, and welcome to a PSL Demo Day. I'm your host, Jason DeBacher of the University of South Carolina and PSL Foundation. Today, we have with us Vincent Dadam, who's a senior research fellow with the South African Reserve Bank Chair of Monetary Economics at the University of Pretoria. Vincent's going to tell us about SAMNet, the South African Modeling Network, a website and associated GitHub repositories that help promote economic modeling and data tools for South Africa. Vincent, good to have you with us. Okay. Well, Vincent, great to have you. You want to start off, give us an introduction? What do you
Okay.
do? Where are you from? Yeah,
All right. Okay, cool. Maybe I should just start by doing the screen at the same time so that we can make it
sure.
much easier. Um, okay. I hope it's up.
Yep,
So
looks
yeah,
great.
um, my name is Vincent Dadam. I'm a researcher with the South African Reserve Bank, chair in monetary economics at the University of Pretoria. My background is more labor market modeling on the macro level, but with affinity with monetary policy. Right now, I'm working on some on labor flows between multiple sectors in the economy, and then trying to see trying to account for also heterogeneity between the agents and the sectors themselves. So that's a little bit of my background, and yeah, I'm happy to discuss further on these topics if anybody listening is interested. But today, I'm here to talk about the South African Modeling Network, which is an idea that was born after we hosted one student from a university in Frankfurt, and we had a discussion, and then our ideas or interests align on that topic. But I will tell you more about it later. All right. So, but before starting to talk about the South African Modeling Network, maybe I should talk a little bit more about the parent institution, which is Economic Research Southern Africa, and it was created in 2004 to provide a bit of a platform that would allow economic research in the southern part of Africa to thrive. And they targeted a couple of points that were supposed to be, let's call it pillars to more to allow for such platform to evolve further. And that was done through allowing the publication of economic research and then pooling resources so that you can provide funding for people interested in doing research in those regions. And also encourage people to share their work or to discuss it through conferences and training programs. And then finally, the objective was also to contribute into the policy debates in the Southern Africa in general and South Africa in particular. Now, what's interesting with ERSA, or Economic Research Southern Africa, was that the board of the institution is constituted by academic, private, and government institutions, right? Which means that the distribution, the spread of the distribution is wide, and then you reach a broader audience, but also with your background, you share with your peers from different backgrounds, which allows to target discussions toward things that will advance economic research in South Africa. Now, through its time, after debating so much on this topic and then targeting policy-oriented research, the idea of the South African Modeling Network was birthed. So the South African Modeling Network was built to just keep South Africa in touch with global development when it comes to economic research. And the idea was to pool resources so that we can connect national policy and academic research, but with global model training or global recent modeling techniques. Now, the institution was built on three main pillars. The first point, which is what I'm going to talk more about later, is the sharing aspect of the South African South African modeling network. I'm apologizing if I'm saying monetary a lot. But the idea here is just to facilitate the sharing of model codes of papers that are either working in progress or are already published on the website somewhere or on a journal, so that we can spark among economists in South Africa discussions and engage with each other in terms of model technique development. Now, the second point of it is to promote training opportunities, but this time more focused on the modeling and the forecasting side, which is a bit different from what ERSA in general is doing, right? So this is more targeted toward forecasting and modeling, especially at the macro level, and then see how these models can be used in a policy analysis. And the third point was to further develop model building or creating more toolbox available to the policymakers or any individual that may be interested into such topics. And here we usually invite people in their area of expertise to present and then to give workshop or classes. One of the workshops that we recently had was the RISE workshop. And this is going to be the first time that I jump out of the presentation just to show you what it is about. And the RISE workshop is a program, or rather a toolbox created by Junior Mai at the Norway Central Bank. And the idea is to create a couple of regime changes and accommodate them into a Markov switching manner. So this is very interesting for South Africa, especially in terms of its background, because doing research in South Africa, you target first. Usually, you target pre and post apartheid regimes, or the 2008 financial crisis, or now with the COVID-19, could be also a good model to apply in the South African economy to capture the differences between before the pandemic impact and then the aftermath of it. So this is the project that we had. This is a workshop that we've had already two times. One pre-COVID, which is funny, and then post-COVID, right? Emphasizing on the regime changes. Right. As I mentioned earlier, I will focus more on the sharing part of the SAMNet, because also it's like, it's really close to what is achieved by the PSL Foundation. All right. So as I also mentioned earlier, in 2019 we invited a research fellow to present at the South African Reserve Bank, or from the Institute of Monetary and Financial Stability, which is in Frankfurt, Germany. And they had a model, a model database that they call the macroeconomic model database that they've been working on for a while now. And it features about 160 model, or a little bit over that. And what's really interesting about what they're doing there is that on top of just like categorizing them into different settings, they also provide the possibility to show the differences, or to compare the models between how it's built and how the results are presented. Now, this is the website of the model of the model database, and they have the website itself and also an application that you can download and then do all these features that you want to do. And they had three components of it: the model database itself, and then a feature where you can contribute if you feel like adding more models to their database. And then a part is little forum where you can discuss ideas about how to improve the whole process. So when you go to the database, this is where you have the online comparison. And you have all the models categorized into different features, right? Like, first here you have the calibrated model, and here you have the estimated, and then one for the US, and then for the Euro area, and other models that are just put into different, which cannot be categorized, and that they found to be very interesting. And they have all these features. So if you're also interested in this kind of, if you're interested into model sharing, I will really strongly advise you to check them out. Okay. So after discussing with them, we decided to do our own approach when it comes to this. So, so the idea originally, the goals here were to focus on DSE models with forecasting abilities, right? So we wanted to approach it that way for a simple reason that every time the South African Reserve Bank hold a monetary policy committee, they release the data from the model that they use for their forecasting features. So the idea was to find similar models in the South African context where anybody interested in this topic could do the same forecast using first the QPM, which is the quarterly projection model of the South African Reserve Bank that we have on our website, and also any other model that is doing some forecasting technique so that they can compare the results from the policymakers in the South African Reserve Bank and from modeling coming from the academic side. Okay, so that's why we wanted to first focus on the DSE models, and then after that, expand this feature to any other model, but with the focus on the South African economy first. Okay, so this was just originally just to generate interest from masters and PhD students because in the academic level, we believe that those are the people who will be more interested into doing some research or having some of these models just to play around with and then generate like ideas that you can use into their model, or incentivize the policymakers or economists from the public or the private sectors, just in terms of having the tool available to them and then playing with it and then having the results that will help them understand much better the performance of the South African economy based on whatever angle that is coming from, whether it is the institution in the South African Reserve Bank or the academic society. And then the idea was also to follow in the Institute of Monetary and Financial Institutions in Frankfurt to focus on encouraging authors to also share their work through maybe discussing papers online in a forum in a similar way, right? So these were the points that originally we wanted to touch on, okay? And then now, how did we go about it? So the idea was always to first identify the paper of interest, paper that will meet the requirements that we felt would be would fit best with the South African modeling network features, and contact the author directly and then see whether they'll be keen to share all the materials of the data of the model. And here I'm talking about both the data and the code, and also the link to the paper or the paper itself, if it's still a working paper, right? Now we make an entry on the website and then we create we give like an abstract so that any party that can, before downloading the paper or the code itself, can have an idea of what the paper is all about. And then after that, we provide a link to the paper. Now, where we do something different here from similar institutions is that what we did here is to create a GitHub repository repository. And there we collect all the papers that we need for all the codes that we need and make it accessible to anybody. I think this was just for the lack of creating a database, not because we didn't want to, but it's just like, we just wanted a product that can come out quick enough and then maybe built on it based on the traction that we receive or not, right? So so far we still have the GitHub repository, and I will show you how it works. And then obviously the link to the GitHub will be attached at the end, where anybody can access the codes and then decide to run it themselves. Okay, so now I'm just gonna show you a little bit how we can download something like that, or how we can easily access features of the South African modeling work. So this is the page itself. Apologies if it's a bit slow. Okay, so here you'll have all the papers, as I described, the title of the paper, where it's published, and then a bit of an abstract, the title, the authors, and then categorizing in terms of what kind of publication it is, and then the link to the GitHub. Okay. So that's one feature of the page. And the other feature is that we decided to categorize them into different features. And here you have access for the South African Reserve Bank quarterly projection model. Sorry, it takes a bit of time to actually appear. It eventually does. Okay, here, this is the quarterly projection model, the model used by the Reserve Bank to estimate features such as the interest rate, output, gap, inflation, and the variable of interest of the South African economy. And it's the model that inform policy decision going forward, right? And usually this is the benchmark of economic forecast coming from the institution itself. So um, and then we have other categories like the social account matrix, other models that we can categorize, CGE models. And in other models, so far, the only paper that we have here is actually Dan's paper. And it was not actually, we couldn't really categorize it exactly in terms of the model structure of it. And it's funny because I recently realized that he also presented at this same uh, same, I guess, launch brown bag. Anyway, so as I said, you'll see that based on the bias that we had originally when we wanted to target originally DSGE models, you'll have more DSGE models. Okay. And one of the paper that is considered maybe as a fully fledged representation of the South African economy was this paper by Smith and other authors um, that estimated a DSG model for the South African economy and compared the forecast of the model to private models. Okay, and that's the model that I'm going to feature to you guys today. So if I click on view on GitHub, then we have the necessary materials that will help you run the code yourself at your own leisure. And this will be the main code, which you can download from here. Okay, I mean, easy from GitHub. And here will be the data. Okay. Now, having done that, you can download it and then keep it in your and open your MATLAB itself. And yeah, here you have the model. Sorry. Yeah, here you have the model with all the features that are necessary to run them. Oh no, actually, this is my model. Apologies. Anyway, so this is the model with the parameters and then endogenous equations, the calibration section here, and then you have the model and the steady states and the estimated parameters that will be done by running this code. All right. And if I were to run the code, then we'll feature the same feature. You will get the same results that are in the paper itself. Okay. Okay. So this will take a bit of time. So but like all in all, this is the feature that we have when it comes to the sharing component of the South African modeling network. And while it's running in the background, I'll just move on to the conclusion of this presentation and the challenges that we faced so far. Now, the first problem that we face has always been a bit of a reluctance from authors to actually share their codes, and the reasons have been nuanced. Uh, for some, it's for copyright reasons, and then for others, it's more the incentive that, like, it might provide a bit of laziness coming from the students, which was not the targeted objective, of course. And also, it could be just because it's a new product, and then we're not quite used to it in the South African scene first. Um, but we've gained a lot of interest from outside, right? From overseas, especially in Brazil. Maybe because of the similarities between the two economies, I'm not sure. But we've interacted a lot with people from that front and who were very interested to know about the South African quarterly projection model and also some of the models that have been targeting the South African economy itself. The other issue that we faced was that we never actually got traction when it comes to the online forum, right? Because we believe that this will be the section where we'll discuss things on a very informal way, and that will allow people to actually feel open and easy to just like discuss certain things or certain thoughts of ideas that they want to incorporate in their models based on what is already available. Now, we are currently working toward reforming ERSA and maybe kind of abandoning having SAMNet as a standalone website, but attach it to the ERSA website itself. And and through there, we hope to streamline exactly what the objectives are, and then maybe just focusing much more on this on the sharing element of the network itself. And and also, we're not sure yet that GitHub is the right way to actually go about storing the data. So this will be something that we also want to take into account and then maybe amend or rather make look better. And yeah, and then the other thing is that we intend now to embark into a second wave of contacting authors again, just to see if their views in terms of sharing and maybe having established ourselves for a bit will actually uh, soften their idea to join SAMNet. And yeah, and the other thing is also discuss with the guys at the Institute of Monetary and Financial Stability. We're planning a visit to Frankfurt this year. But the main idea first is just going to be to identify sort of like offer the South African quarterly projection model to their database and then see how it performs compared to other people, just to give a bit of exposure. And then after that, discuss also like, how we can contribute with more models that have been done on our site and how the experience has been going forward or well, in the past, and then how we can learn from it and incorporate them in our in the way we can go forward. So this is it from me, and I'm just gonna check back on the model if it's done now. Should be. Okay, yeah. Last few rounds, but it should be over soon. Anyway,
Yeah,
so I just
Vincent.
wanted to pick this model to show you guys how it works. And thank you. We can get questions if you have any while
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
running in the
Thank you
background.
so much, Vincent.
Yeah, yeah.
This is really great. I guess to start, I'll begin kind of where you ended with some of the changes you're thinking about with SAMNet, and in
Mhm.
particular, the suggestion of moving things off of GitHub. Is that just the data, or is that the model code as well that
Mostly
you
the
want to put
code.
on the website? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And
The codes are the part that are not really on the website. So yeah.
okay. And why is that though? Because I feel like GitHub is a nice platform. You showed us, the code is available to download, but also like, it's also available for people to make contributions. If they found an error in the code, it's easy to
Yeah,
identify and have a pull request. So there
yeah.
seems, I don't know, to me, some advantages of GitHub, but what are some drawbacks you've seen with that as a
No,
platform?
I definitely agree. I think it could be also like a platform. A GitHub can provide also the platform where we can actually discuss things like the feature of the forum that we had in mind can be actually
Yeah.
established there. But I guess it's just that it's not showing that much interest in the South African front. I
Hmm.
mean, I think my understanding is that if it's going to be on one website, then it needs to be on the SAMNet website itself. So
Yeah.
having like an open source website where people can go from is actually probably like causing a little bit of friction. And I'm not
Hmm.
sure. Yeah. So we just wanted to try something. I mean, we can still keep the GitHub on the side,
Yeah.
provide interested parties to either access it through the website itself, and if you are more GitHub favorite, then you can go to the GitHub repository. You can get access to all that. Anyway, so the model
Okay.
is run, and then usually these are the findings that you get for a typical DSG model with estimated using Bayesian technique. And here will be the necessary posterior, sorry, yeah. So here, for instance, you'll have the posteriors and the priors themselves. And in here, you have the results of the estimation, which is mirrored from the paper itself. And
Yeah.
yeah, this is one of the
Very
things that
nice
you
that
can
you
use
could
for
go
the web.
replicate those results
Yeah,
right here
yeah,
live for
yeah.
us. Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
Super neat.
Yeah, yeah. So that's it from me, and I'm open for more questions if you do have.
All right.
Yeah, I'd love to. I have a question for you, Vincent. This is
Okay.
really awesome and ambitious. I love the three pillars of the training where you've got sharing, training, and what was the third one?
Model development.
And model development. Yeah. Uh, so I'm interested in what you. Well, let me back up. One thing you just mentioned to Jason's question is that you run into some roadblocks for really having this proliferate widely through kind of the modeling community in South Africa. One is GitHub has a big learning curve, and you've seen that. Um, I'm interested to hear kind of how the proliferation has been among the modeling community in South Africa. Like, have you and beyond? You mentioned Brazil. Um, who are the main users and success stories that you've had inside of South Africa and outside of South Africa? And what are the you've got this universe of models. What are the models that you've seen that have really been most successful in this endeavor?
So in the South African sense, as I was saying, is that the issue is that we fail to actually create that sort of interest, and that's not for the lack of trying. In each conferences or workshop that we do, we try to advertise it as much as we can, but for some reason, it hasn't really worked out for us. So it's kind of hard to actually pinpoint if there's been any real success stories. So other than maybe some email here and there was a chat with some guys from the private sector that were very interested into the labor market element of things, and then they found it sort of in the GitHub. I think just to have a discussion with people like that, in the South African sense, I think it was a sort of like a think tank. That's the only one part of things that I can consider as a success story when it comes to the South African scene. However, overseas, I mean, it's easy to say that already the PSL Foundation is the one who contacted us through the back channel of our website. That's one thing. And in Brazil, there have been a lot of interest from the quarterly projection models. And usually it's from like investment banks who are trying to replicate a little bit like the reality in South Africa and the reality in Brazil. And because them being both emerging economies and having similar models to predict macro variables, I think the discussion has been more engaging and they've been very targeted. And I don't understand. We fail to understand why this hasn't happened in South Africa. So we're trying to approach it a bit differently and then see what's going to happen next. I see Dan raise his hand. I don't know if I fully answered the question first.
Rick, you're muted.
Nico is muted.
Sorry, I was just going to say thanks for that,
Okay.
Dan. I'll pass the mic to Dan.
All right.
Well, I was going to hazard a guess about what some of the frictions might be. I wonder whether it isn't just that it's still quite challenging to get code to run, and so it is at the moment very still something only for expert users. In the case of the QPM, you need MATLAB to run it.
Sorry, I'm losing you a bit. Is it me who suck, or I didn't hear that?
Did you not hear me?
I could hear that.
Okay. Maybe I'll just repeat myself. I wonder whether one of the friction isn't that it's on the one hand, it requires expert knowledge to be able to run some of the models that are in public domain in South Africa. And number two, that you need software like MATLAB that's expensive and many and outside of research, outside of universities, people might not have access to MATLAB. And so I wonder, and then number three, the availability of real-time data to actually keep these models in production. So, but I think as a community, there's definitely been some advances in this space. So there are now APIs available for a lot of the data that policy models might want to use. And so I think there is tremendous opportunity, and we've seen, with the work Jason and Richard that you've been doing, that it is possible to keep policy models alive and make them accessible to even junior researchers. So I think there's these frictions I think are becoming less binding. So I think there's a lot to be optimistic about, but these kinds of initiatives are really important.
Yeah, no, I'm in full agreement with everything that you say. And I think the reason why we also inspired to go for another way in terms of contacting people who might be interested in sharing their code is because in recent time, software such as MATLAB and any other program has been made very easily available in the South African sense, especially to the vast audience. Like at the University of Pretoria, there is an academic license that can have pretty much all the students to have them on computer labs and all that. And also there is a think tank, or rather like, a small data sort of firm that is trying to make it available even at a cheaper rate called Optinum. And then the pricing is really lower compared to what it was maybe 10 years ago. Okay. So that's one thing. Data availability, yeah, I definitely agree. And also, yeah, I mean, if we can reach out outside the world, and then manage to engage with them, and then there is hope in the future for it to move in the right direction. I think we just need to keep going and then try to maybe hit the right nerves, and then maybe we will or rather hit the right notes, and we might actually get to the objective that we have in mind. But and yeah, PSL is also an inspiration, and then yeah, I mean, we're trying to get all that and see how we can push it forward.
Yeah, I think this, as Rick said, this is a really strong foundation with these three pillars. I also liked how you mentioned kind of reaching out to the master's and PhD students. Those are the next generation of researchers,
Yeah.
and also people who don't have an entrenched interest in their own model, and so maybe more willing to try different things and really benefit from what SAMNet makes available. Have you found that to be the case, that those younger scholars are more easily adopting these models you've made available?
No, the easiest answer would be no. I mean, no, we haven't gotten anybody really from a master's or PhD students interested or coming out to say that,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we found this model through SAMNet, or yeah, or we heard about it from somebody who used SAMNet. No, I don't think. Also, just because we didn't hear it doesn't necessarily mean it's not happening. Maybe it's happening in the
Yeah, yeah.
background, but we don't have a way to actually formally quantify it. But I think it comes from also like advertising it a bit more, maybe, but using different channels. So that's that's one way we can go about it. But for now, honestly, we're just like at a stage where we're just trying to understand all the mistakes or all the things that we've done wrong, and then see how much we can get out of it and then move forward. And that's why talking to the people who have done it for a longer time, like the guys in Frankfurt, would be a very great idea to actually like push it forward. So yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think there's a service too in terms of just having put this together. You've forced the authors to make sure their code, works and is good enough to be put out there, published like this on GitHub. So like that in itself, I feel like is a really valuable service. And to the extent then that leads to other researchers, that's just even all the better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I am total agreement.
Yeah. Well, Vincent, I'm super interested in what you're doing.
Yeah.
As noted, I think before we started this call was just a lot of overlap in terms of what the policy simulation library wants to do and what SAMNet is doing in terms of encouraging modeling, encouraging modelers to make their code available, and hoping that science, evolves more quickly because we have these shared standards, these shared code bases, and so on, and we can build off what others have done. So, again,
Yeah.
kudos to you for getting this set up. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you being here today with us to share it. And we'll certainly be in the touch in the future. I guarantee we'll cross paths again here, Vincent.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. Thank you for having me. It was a very nice chat, and I look forward to doing this again at some point.
Yeah, absolutely, Vincent.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
All right. Ciao.
Have a
Have
good
a good
evening.
one. Yeah.